Hey guys, welcome back to this series where I talk about 10 albums that I liked recently. And yeah, I'm not sure if there will be another one next week, but uh, we'll look at the backlog. We'll see if there's 10 albums I want to talk about really, or can talk about in an extended detail. There probably is, but I'm just not sure at this point. Um, but I will keep making these videos. They're probably just not gonna. Eventually, they're not gonna be a weekly sort of thing. But for now, we have one this week with 10 albums. And I think this one has a lot more variety than the last two in terms of genre and just a lot of different factors that I think make some of the albums I picked for this one a bit different. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, Lateralis by Tool. It's got some really solid riffs and guitar playing, and I really like that some of the riffs are more bass forward. The bass really seems to be the star of the show on this album, and just in general on a lot of other Tool songs and albums I've listened to. It seems like the guitar is there as a supporting instrument to really play around with the bass is kind of having at the forefront rather than what is usually a lot of the time other bands will have the guitar playing the main things, and then the bass is just kind of there to support the low end sound. It'll kind of just be playing a riff very similar to the guitar. But yeah, Maynard's vocals impressed me at some points, specifically his screams, like at the end of Grudge. I thought the parabol into parabola transition was really insane. And I'd be remiss not to mention the title track with its crazy Fibonacci sequence inspired time signatures and how the vocal syllable counts are all Fibonacci numbers, ascending and descending. I think that's just a super cool concept. But yeah, check it out if you're into prog metal and you somehow haven't heard this album before, or just if you want to get into that genre. Next up, Revenge Seekers by Jane Remover. So many creative sounds on this one. I really love the production, and I'm not really sure how to describe it, but it feels like it's taking elements from hip hop, EDM, hyperpop, and all sort of just coming together. Either way, I think this is an album that sounds like nothing else that's coming out right now, and I think it's just so cool. So many awesome sounds and cool samples, and just that's kind of just the number one word I can use to describe this album. Just say cool. Ego Trip by John Mikel and Anthony James. Really solid. Production's got old school, like Kanye soul sample chop vibes, and the rapping reminds me kind of Mavi a bit, but that's kind of as close as a comparison I can get. It's not exactly like Mavi, but I think I was having trouble figuring out who his the vocals reminded me of. I played it for a friend, and he that's who he said, and I thought that yeah, it was it's kind of similar. I could see the comparison kind of, but I'm not really sure about if that's exactly who I was thinking of when I heard these vocals. But I really loved the wordplay, the vocal inflections, how he emphasizes certain words and his flows. I think the only complaint I really have about this album is that some of the songs sound a bit too similar to each other, but towards the end, the sound of the album switched up a little bit. But even the ones that even kind of sound the same are all still great. Tap in, especially if you're from Philadelphia and want to support the local music scene from there. Next up, A City Drowned in God's Black Tears by Infinity Knives and Brian Ennals. Politically, no punches held. From track one, they tell you exactly what the album is about. Brian Ennals has some really interesting thing to say here. A line that stood out just to give you the vibe of the what politically the album is about. Death of one man is a tragedy. The death of his million is a statistic. It's certainly not the first time I've heard this phrase, and certainly not the first time I've heard it in the rap song. Brings to mind Billy Woods' opening lines on Soft Landing off of his album Mats. Single death is tragedy, eggs make omelets. Uh, I picked out this example just to sort of give a taste what the album is about. Tons of shots fired at U.S. presidents, Netanyahu, police, various others. The beats are super solid. There's there's some tracks that are just instrumentals, and those are really good too. But at certain times, it's like it can get a little more laid back to literally let the vocals shine through, let the message really come across. But yeah, make sure to check this out if you're from Baltimore or just Maryland in general. As always, support your local music scene. Yeah, pretty good hip hop, some futuristic sounds. Check it out. Master of Puppets by Metallica. So universally, this is like lauded as Metallica's best album, and I think for a couple of reasons I can see why. James Hetfield as a vocalist only really improves with each album, and I think like even today his like live performances and a few of the songs I've heard off the later albums, he still sounds great, and it's so impressive that he's really able to not only play these like super fast songs while singing, but while down picking most of the time. And people say that Master Puppets has the best tones for their instruments, but for me personally, I really prefer that sound from Ride the Lightning. I think the only aspect that I think I prefer on the later albums of like is like James Hetfield's like vocal progression. I think he just only continues to sound better with each album. But I think for me personally, my personal preference of when their instruments sounded the best was Ride the Lightning. You had like just these super like crazy like guitar sounds, and I think Cliff's like bass tone on it you can literally see it like the best with that intro from on For Whom the Bell Tolls. But to me, that album has only gotten better for me, and I might end up talking about Ride the Lightning again at some point in the channel if I ever decide to do a video where I only revisit albums I've already talked about on this channel. But regardless, Master of Puppets has some of Metallica's most iconic songs with the title track, Battery, Orion, and honestly, I think even the rest of this track list could still make up like a lot of the list of Metallica's most iconic songs. But yeah, I think this is a really solid album. I can see why people love it so much. I just don't think it's personally my favorite Metallica album, but it's still phenomenal regardless. Alright, Nevermind by Nirvana. First off, I want to say that the mix on the remaster is just great. You can really hear every instrument clearly, nothing's drowned out at all. And I haven't really listened to the original mix. I'm not even sure if it's on streaming services, so I don't really know how it stacks up. But I think the remaster, just as a standalone, is mixed pretty well, at least to my normie ears. I think it's pretty easy to understand what Kurt is saying, but lyrically, it is a bit unfocused at times, so I guess that I can kind of see why lyrically they got the reputation they did, especially with like that famous Weird Al parody. But yeah, so many classics on here. The first 5 track run is really insane. It's got spells like Teen Spirit, into In Bloom, into Come As You Are, then into Breathe, and then into Lithium. And you've still got songs on here like Something in the Way, which I think is super simple but like still great. Overall, great drum work and solid bass lines that stood out on a few tracks. Guitar work is pretty simple, but I think it works like pretty well. But yeah, solid album. They Left Me with a Gun and They Left Me with the Sword by Paris, Texas. These are 2 EPs, really solid. It's hip hop with inspiration from rock and other genres, and I think they actually play guitar and bass, like, and it's not like MIDI instruments. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure they actually like play those instruments. I don't know a ton. I'd have to look into specifically what they do, but I think that's what I've seen online about them. Um, but yeah, the they seem to be using actual bass guitars at the very least, and I think a couple tracks did use actual guitars. Some drum beats, I think the drum beats did sound like they were from software, but I think tons of artists use drum machines nowadays. So I don't really have a preference either way. I think both can be used to make pretty cool sounds. But yeah, a lot of variety in the voices from both of them and flows. Just pretty cool. I'm gonna be probably seeing. Yeah, I'm gonna be seeing them opening for Tyler next month, I guess. So I listened to this like a couple months ago, just in preparation for that, because I had heard some buzz about this when this dropped. But yeah, they're really solid EPs, and you should check them out if you're into any of those sort of sounds. Shut the fuck up talking to me by Zach Fox. When this first came out, I thought it was alright. It was mildly funny, but personally, it didn't stack up to the singles like Jesus the One, I Got Depression, The Bean Kicked In, IHY2LN, Marinate. But after this re listen, I guess I just had my ears closed or something, because there's tons of hilarious bars in here. My personal favorite is that this one bit on Get Off My Dick, the Kenny Beats collab. Please let go of my penis. I've been making play since a motherfucking fetus. Sixth grade, I was getting top at the recess. High school had a white bitch like Regis. Host said she was gonna fuck. That's facetious. How you gonna lie in your pussy? That's egregious. Nothing in her throat. Virgin birth like Jesus. Get off my meat, bitch. That's a whole thesis. And I'm not really doing it justice with just my standard I guess monotone sort of reading of these bars, but that's just a taste of the bars all over this project. And check it out for more hilarious shit like that. Significant Other by Limp Bizkit. All right, guys, I need you to hear me out on this one. All right, this is a really good album. I genuinely believe that this is a good album. And Wes Borland is a beast at making catchy riffs on tons of songs. He really captures that sample sort of vibe that new metal gets hip hop influences from. And he's like genuinely way better than he needs to be for this band. Fred Durst is a lyricist, I'm gonna be honest. He low key sucks. But he brings the energy that the tracks need to work, and new metal's campy as fuck, but it's part of what makes the genre work in the first place. And I respect the hustle, but I've never heard anyone rap a whole song about how broke they are. That's not really like a thing that like that's not a thing that really happens in hip hop, I guess. So I respect it. DJ Premier X Method Man X Limp Bizkit is also an insane collab on this album. That song is all right, but it's also just part of the novelty, I think, is just how insane that link up is. But yeah, there's also definitely some stinkers in the track list, especially towards the back half. But there's also some crazy eyes on here, so I think it's still worth like checking out, despite its flaws. And it is dated to a degree, but I think I still appreciate it for what it is. Shrines by Arm& Hammer, and it wouldn't be a Yogas video if I didn't cover Billy Wood's or Arm& Hammer album. It's probably going to be like that for a while I still have this huge backlogs of albums that I have yet to talk about. Anyway, album's pretty sick. Loved instrumentals, some common Woods collaborators on here producing, and some various other producers you might know. Kenny Segal, Earl Sweatshirt produces and drops a verse on another song. Navy Blue, Messiah Music, Steel Tip Dove, Nicholas Craven, and more. Lucid's diss on JPEG Mafia on Leopards is still pretty awesome, even if the beef is long past. I think I probably between like Rebound and Leopards. I think I probably do prefer Rebound as a song more, but uh, I think Lucid probably has more valid things to say, more actual disses on his song. I think he has the better diss probably, but I do really like the production on Rebound. That's an awesome song off of Offline. And what is it called on? Is it still called Rebound on LP? I think so. Anyway, the album has somewhat of a regal sound to it, a little bit, a little jazzy, kinda. I'm not really sure how to describe it. Uh, there are a couple tracks with horns, which kind of gives me that sort of vibe. Which partly is the reason why I said it had a kind of regal vibe, but it's not a sound that horn sort of sound. The regal bit is only on a few songs, so I can't really call the album regal sounding. But like if you heard me talk about Arm& Hammer, they'll have a consistent sound for every one of their albums. All the instrumentals are definitely great, regardless. But yeah, there's definitely a vision behind the sound. I just can't really put the right words to what that vision is, I guess. But yeah, really solid album, so you should check it out. and that is the last album for this video. Next week, we'll see if I have another album I want to drop. Another video about 10 albums I want to drop. Uh, we'll see if I also do some individual videos on some albums that I just really like and I just want to talk about. But we'll see what I'll do next week. I have yet to decide exactly what is going to go up or if I'm going to upload a video at all next week. But we'll see. But just know more videos are coming. It just possibly might not be next week. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.